Hi.
Hi, Dirk.
So, this is Gray, and Gray's American,
Yes.
and you have migrated to the UK.
I have. It's been 8 years living in London.
8?
8, yes.
That's quite a bit.
I know. I was thinking about that actually because I moved where I was living before I moved to England 8 years ago was in LA, in Echo Park, across Sunset, right up on West Kensington. So I didn't make it too far actually.
So
It's nice to come home.
it was like coming home to one of your homes, huh?
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's nice because I kind of had heard about the Tom House, but when I was living here, I think it still kind of felt like this house on the hill, and I kind of didn't know about it, and I was curious, and I think now to be able to be here and be a part of it feels...
And to
really
tell
special.
others.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes.
It was interesting when I was just talking to Pei, and his preconceptions.
Mm.
You know, I don't know if you had preconceptions before you arrived, but did you?
Yeah, well, I had mentioned that I've been to a Christmas party here.
Oh, right.
When Marcel was doing their
Yes.
residency, and it was so amazing. There was like a Santa situation, and the kinky elves, sitting on Santa's lap, and I was just like, oh, this place is amazing. I think, I think I wasn't able to come upstairs even, so it also had
Right.
that kind of like even the next level of alluredness and allure, and if you know, you know. And so I think being able to actually like live here and have my own room in the space, and I think also I'm happy that we're shooting this in the library, because I think this is one part that I wasn't as familiar with. But when Marty was giving us the kind of breakdown in her like amazing methodological library science process of like all of this, I'm like overwhelmed by how much amazing archival material and how much passion and like accessibility there is, considering how much stuff you guys have to offer and to sort through. And I think she was kind of talking about, and I think you were also really involved in this process of like, how do we want to have this organized in a way that abides by, certain kind of approaches to like library mechanisms, but it's not like any other library. So
but also accessible.
Exactly, totally.
Yeah.
And fun, and like there's high and low, and being exposed to new artists and new publications and ways of kind of thinking and collating, and what it means to like be a living, breathing archive.
So let me ask you a few questions about your method and your mediums and your message. So why don't we just start with your medium? I
have, I think, not necessarily like a signature medium per se. I work in a lot of sculpture and installation, and a lot of conceptual work, and then also a lot of handmade collage, textile, paper, drawing. But I think what I like to think about my overall, if not medium, methodology is very much like rooted in collage. And some of that is literal collage. So especially being here and having a lot of gay erotica has been something I've actually been like using in my work since I was, honestly, like middle school. I think my parents were always like, okay, like whatever you want. But I think it's nice to kind of like have that be this constant. And then I've gone through so much change, and kind of my relation to my work and my ideas around it have shifted a lot. But I'm so drawn to like especially like the materiality of the images, and kind of especially pornography from a certain time period, like 70s, 80s. Michael and I, the other artist in resident, were talking about the kind of process of the set design, the costuming, the printing itself. I have a lot of relationship to printmaking as well, which I've been doing a bit of here at a local studio. And you very kindly continue to, as soon as I get through scanning or collaging into my paddles new work, you come and dump a new gold mine of boxes of like the most amazing archival kind of ephemera that I could ever imagine. So I'm very grateful and very overwhelmed because I feel like I brought a lot of material with me, and I have this process, as you were saying. I lived in LA, and then now I live in London and have done other residencies or other shows.
Right.
And I'm kind of always bringing a big box of clippings and papers that I've had with me, almost for the last 8 to 10 years. And they kind of go through my life with me or my practice, and I'm ready then to maybe let it go or to like let it become a work and kind of see where it takes me.
Right.
And so I think being here has been really amazing to also have this process of letting go and knowing that more kind of interesting things will come my way.
They will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel I really don't know if I could think of a more perfect context for me to have immersed myself in this current project.
And so why don't we share a little bit about what your current project is?
Yes, I had a solo show at a gallery in LA last year called A Not Epke that was also called Fraternity, which is the event that I'm throwing at the Tom House tomorrow.
And say it one more time.
Fratricide.
Okay.
It's kind of around, in some ways, like fraternity culture, which also kind of has a subcultural element in pornography and gay erotica as well. But there's kind of with the BDSM paddles, but also the kind of craft element of these like fraternity Greek paddles that are in some ways literalized in the hazing process, and I'm interested in that. I'm interested in identity formation and community, subcultural communities, homosocial spaces, and especially the architecture around those, which I think especially for the Tom House and my residency I wanted to focus on. And I think in part because I'm really being able to live it and embody what it's like to be living in a communal space.
Yes.
That has this history, and in its own way it feels the kind of craftsman style of this house has a relationship to many traditional fraternity houses.
Yes.
But in a flipped way, obviously. Yeah. But I think the architecture has been really integral, thinking about that, and kind of this, whether or not it's utopian, I think this kind of like pseudo-socialist idea of sharing and community and communal space that I think is embedded in fraternities but is maybe overlooked sometimes. But I think the paddles are also this, on the one hand, materially like a canvas that I can kind of work on. It's like this set format, but then they also are imbued with a lot of other meaning, and I'm interested in the relationship between power and how that can maybe be uprooted
and
or subverted.
Submission.
And submission, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I think desire is a way that power, and through submission, exactly, it can be uprooted, because if someone wants to be submissive or to submit, then that kind of already is playing with the idea of consent and intimacy and power and violence. And so I think these paddles I think hold a lot of meaning already, and then I think to be able to collage on top of them is a really interesting surface for me.
Did you just come upon this idea?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think because I don't necessarily have one singular medium, I'm kind of, when an idea, I have kind of a conceptual process or practice, and so once I have an idea or a kind of subculture or kind of topic I'm interested in, it feels like then the materials manifest themselves. And so on the one hand it can be a bit frustrating, because sometimes I'm like, fuck, maybe I should just like be a painter where I can know that I'm returning to canvas, or if I'm returning to working on paper, but that would make it too easy on myself. But I think it is I think part of the puzzle for me of like thinking of new ways, new surfaces, new materials, new ways of kind of expressing the idea I'm working on that makes most sense. So I think I think I had this one idea, and now I've really had the opportunity to push them more and more and see where they can take me.
And you've also, in regards to your exit performance, you've invited others to partake in it. And how is that all fit?
I think because as a visual artist who, you know, otherwise works, it's a process I really like. I work, it's a kind of a solitary process of being in the studio. I think it's something I really enjoy, this meditative, reflective, kind of exploratory experience. But I think a part of my practice is also really excited by collaboration, because it's a way to like get myself out of my own head. There's so much that I'm not able to do. It's like a reason why I think it's why we enjoy as artists other people's work, is I'm like, I could never do this, I could never think of this. Like, you're also kind of approaching things in new and unique ways. So for me, I think also, especially as you're saying, coming back home, to tap into like the community of, you know, artists or DJs or writers here, to be like, this is what I'm thinking about. And I think bringing you into this space that's already, you know, so communal. It's been so great with Michael and Pei and Stuart and everyone living here, to just hear more how everyone else is, how they work, how they think, what they're excited by and turned on by.
I see that you actually really do. Your interest really goes into the artist, and you try to you figured them out in a way.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of detective work, which I'm interested in, but it's just nice to, I think that's been a really special opportunity, and I think for this house to to be able to share it with friends who've maybe already been here or have never been able, like never made it here or have heard. And I mean, everyone who's come through is always like completely obsessed and wants to, you know, spend all day here. But I think there's so much to offer, and it's kind of the perfect context for this kind of fraternity, homosocial, communal space interrogation. And I think it adds a lot of interesting new directions to go, and also nuances and critiques of, you know, I think mainstream heterosexual fraternity culture that in some ways can be, or, you know, it has its own identity.
This may be difficult to answer in regards to yourself and your journey that you're on in regards as an artist. Are you exploring? I mean, to explore fraternities is very sort of male, macho, hetero.
Totally.
And yet you're right.
But homoerotic as well.
Yes, very homoerotic, and actually has been used in porn.
Totally.
Gay porn, and you've gotten the green light.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. And I do like the concept that just how you saw the house, and that the communal living similar to a fraternity and their communal living, and that there's similarities. And I never even saw that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think too, there's like, I'm interested again in this kind of interrogation of power, and how I think letting things be more strange or expansive than we might think. And so there's also, I'm interested in this like lateral relationship between straight culture and queer culture, gay culture, that oftentimes, I mean, as we're like, I think this idea of co-opting or appropriating from each other, and how that's kind of this cycle. I think like the Bruce Weber imagery from Abercrombie and Fitch, I think is a really like seminal kind of reference for me too, as one example of like many of, I think, gay people making some of the most iconic kind of straight cultural objects. I mean, it's similar to like a lot of the most famous like Christmas music was written by Jewish people. I think it's this, there's a lot of like projection and fantasy, and that distance kind of allows for it. And so, and in the reverse as well, like I think there's a lot that I think is either emulated or fantasized about through straight culture of queerness and of gayness. And so I think letting those play and wrestle and be kind of messy and more interesting.
And you actually, I mean, we tend to, well, actually, you're making me realize that within straight culture, they are constantly adopting things that we have within our own
100%.
Homo culture.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of this interplay and kind of this, yeah, I think to kind of map it in some ways, but it's not totally linear. And I think letting it be more complicated and just being interested in that. I appreciate what you said of recognizing that it comes from a lot of my genuine interests. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very excited about the opportunity that my life affords as being both gay and trans and also an artist, that like I'm able to kind of question the world around me and engage with it and with so many different kinds of people. And I mean, it just really is in a maybe saccharine way, like I have a lot of excitement in my life that I get to kind of explore all these different things.
Yes, and you tend to give that off a lot.
That's good.
Yes, so it's, and you're very complimentary.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, that's I grew up in Texas, so I feel like that's my southern hospitality.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, to be an educator for our public,
Mm-hmm.
and for any who, as far as identification,
Mm-hmm.
and do you identify as trans?
Yes.
And you identify as male?
Yeah, trans man
Yeah.
and gay, queer, and I think on that note too, there's something. Speaking of fantasy with the fraternity, there's a distance. I was speaking with Pei as well about this and the idea of kind of co-option or colonization or and collapsing of identity. And I think for me, as you said, the journey, like my journey, I am very infatuated with masculinity and interested in, obviously I'm desirous of it. But I think that I'm interested in these kind of, this has been a thread of like a fantasy of, especially in a cinematic way, of
Yes.
like kind of homosocial spaces that, you know, growing up I was literally excluded from being, you know, a woman at the time or socialized as one. So like the locker room as one, the male locker room and a frat house. But I think there's also this, that now some of them having access to, but I think the fraternity house being very much, I think, a fantasy space, and that's what I think the event is, and us really like being able to kind of critique and play with it. But I think the Tom house, that's where it differentiates, is like feeling actually like belonging here.
Yes, right.
Where like I would not want to be living at a
And
frat
a
house,
fraternity.
and also I wouldn't be allowed because I'm an
Right.
adult man, but
Right.
yeah, so I think that
But
that's a nice,
co-opting it.
totally, yeah, but I think it's nice to also recognize and delineate fantasy versus reality, and again, I think to be able to make the work while really genuinely like embodying the experience of getting to live with you all and be in this house and be in a shared community that also does feel like safer and
Have you
more
paddled?
interesting. What? We need to do paddling.
Have you paddled?
I haven't.
So tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Wow.
Let's do it. I can't wait.
And you're going back to England,
Yes.
and then you're going to continue, I guess.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
I'll be back here whether you guys like it or not. You won't be able to keep me away.
Well,
Just come visit and hang out in the library. I've got a lot more books.
you know,
Yeah.
you absolutely, and that's good for everyone else to know that we're open,
Yeah,
and people can come and visit.
amazing.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.